The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, "This is my commandment, love one another as I have loved you. A man can have no greater love than to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I shall not call you servants anymore, because a servant does not know his master's business. I call you friends, because I have made known to you everything I have learnt from my Father. You did not choose me. No, I chose you, and I commissioned you to go out and to bear fruit, fruit that will last. And then the Father will give you anything you ask him in my name. What I command you is to love one another." The Gospel of the Lord. Again, we have presented to us in this first reading from the Acts of the Apostles this practical advice which is time conditioned. I mentioned it yesterday, that the newly converted pagans who are not required to go through circumcision must nonetheless, by the authority of the apostles, abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood and from the meat of strangled animals, and from fornication. Here there's a mix. Clearly fornication is a fulfillment of the sixth commandment, fifth commandment, and these other ones are only, as we said yesterday, time-conditioned, practical, prudential advices in order to avoid scandal. In the Jewish and religious context of the day, not to eat these foods that have been killed in these ways because of the way it will be misread by others. And clearly we eat meat that has been killed today with blood in it and all sorts of other things. And even later in Corinthians, Paul gives advice to the Corinthians that they can indeed eat the foods that have been sacrificed to idols, as long as they do not cause others to fall. And yesterday I mentioned the practice of communion in the hand and communion on the tongue, and was saying that communion in the hand cannot be considered a sin and cannot be considered a sacrilege, and I gave those reasons yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, you can look at the live stream to hear that homily. And I say this because there are numbers of people now saying that communion in the hand is a sacrilege and somehow sinful. And I feel a certain responsibility as a pastor to correct these errors. The church, in the early church, clearly practiced communion in the hand, even if it was only localized. It was described by Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, a father of the church, that if it was to be practiced, this is how it is to be done. And clearly, as time went forward, the church chose a better way, and that remains the normative way, on the tongue, including kneeling. But there can be moments where in the hand is the only way. For example, a bishop might lay down a local law, and we can debate whether that's just and right, but certainly the church has the authority to regulate these things in the liturgy. And the question then becomes, if one is in a diocese where this has been legislated by the bishop, communion in the hand is required and communion on the tongue forbidden temporarily, might have been due to COVID or some other reason. The question then becomes for Catholics, can I legitimately receive in the hand even though my preference is on the tongue? And my response would be to such people who are tempted to fast from the Eucharist for an extended period of time, would be to say, well, Why would you deprive yourself of the greatest good that God is giving you, the body and blood of his own Son that leads you into an intimacy with the Father and is the deepest desire of the Trinity to draw us into that life? To refuse that offer because I personally don't like the suboptimal means that is being offered to me, the means of delivery, is a kind of craziness in the faith, I have to say. It shows that our loves are in wrong order, that we would let a defective means prohibit us from receiving the greatest good that God is offering us in our daily Catholic life, shows that I misunderstand the intentions of Christ and I don't have my loves in right order. Of course, if it was sinful, we can never use an evil to attain a good. So there it would be a different matter. But given that it is not in and of itself an intrinsic evil to receive in the hand, it is not a sacrilege. It has been used in the church in the past, if only in a temporary and limited way. And we know that the norm, and for us, it is the better way on the tongue. It would be a folly to say no to a communion with Christ because I don't like the mode of reception and personally it does not fit with my preferences. And there one might have to submit temporarily to a means of delivery and reception that one does not like, but for the sake of a greater good I receive. God is in the business of using imperfect means. The whole economy of salvation, he uses imperfect means and with a certain joy to do so. The very incarnation itself, God coming down into the dirtiness of a sinful world, the darkness of sin to enlighten us and to save us, taking a human soul, which was the instrument of the original sin, the human will, human intelligence, a human body which is contaminated in one way or another by connection to a broken, fallen world. Even if Christ has immaculate flesh and immaculate soul, nonetheless, it's in a world where those things were the instruments of sin. And all the way through the economy of salvation, choosing the Jews who were so fickle and up and down in their fidelity, choosing a number of pagan women prostitutes in the Old Testament to be part of the genealogy of Christ, choosing apostles, including and especially Peter and Judas, by which to do good works. The Father is in the business of using defective means to communicate his greatest gifts. And there, my brothers and sisters, we must be able and we should discern rightly in our faith. It would be a folly to deprive ourselves of the spiritual and supernatural food simply because we have been forced into a funnel and have to receive in the hand. And maybe we could even offer that particular difficulty, if we don't like it, as a penance for others who have imposed it on us wrongly, or for others who abuse the Blessed Sacrament by receiving with a cold heart. I say this deliberately because I'm aware of these errors abroad being taught by people on the internet, propagated by other priests. We have to have the right reasoning in our faith in these things so that we don't twist ourselves into knots and think that we're doing something pious and holy and religious when it's simply another form of Puritanism and Jansenism dressed up to look like it's the Catholic faith. And if we hold to it in our pride, it becomes another form of a Pharisaism in the church, thinking that I'm more righteous because I hold out and I won't give way to communion in the hand because I have a deeper understanding, when in fact my understanding could well be very defective in this regard. My brothers and sisters, when we look at what's being offered to us in Holy Communion, and there are two legitimate means, when I say defective means, it does not mean that anything can be used and the most abusive means could be employed. I'm talking about one or two legitimate means of which one is better and the other is less preferred. Let us be in the truth on these things, and not only that, search for the truth when we are presented with these conundrums in Catholic life. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.